Everyone watched The Walking Dead, at least for a while, and no one can forget that Rick Grimes put many zombies to rest with a Colt Python. Realistic? Maybe not. You probably want more than 6 rounds at your disposal before a somewhat cumbersome reload when fighting off hordes of the living dead. But it looked cool, although Rick did have some weird methods of lining up the sights. A huge thanks goes out to Gun Prime for loaning us the Colt Python for this review. Go check them out, they have a ton of inventory and they actually get a lot of Colts in. Not just the new ones, but some of the old ones too. Definitely worth a look. I know what some of you are thinking, a revolver. What could Alabama Arsenal possibly know about a revolver? But I actually have been collecting firearms for many years and own quite a few revolvers. I also happen to own an original Colt Python and thought it would be interesting to compare the original one to the new one, because bringing back the Python was a very bold move on Colt's part and put them in a tough position. Naturally, people are going to compare the old Python to the new, and many people felt that the Python was the finest production revolver ever made. One thing that is hard to deny is that there is something special about a Python that just looks amazing. Whether or not you think it is the greatest revolver of all time, I would have to argue that it has to be one of the best looking revolvers of all time, because there is something straight up sexy about a Colt Python. This, sadly, is a 4-inch, or to be more correct, the new Python is actually a 4 1/4 inch. There is also a 6-inch available, which in my opinion would be the more desirable of the two. It just wouldn't be a Python without the full barrel underlug and the ventilated rib on top, giving the Python its drop-dead gorgeous good looks. For the updated model, Colt also made the front sight easily changeable so you can swap it out to a fiber optic or tritium or whatever else you want. The rear sight is fully adjustable. The trigger has a slightly different bow, supposedly to give the shooter a greater mechanical advantage. I think that Colt did a great job on the modern grips, and they do have the Colt medallion on them, but if you like some older grips, they should all fit. I also love the large hammer spur on the Pythons, and cocking back the hammer is ever so very silky smooth. Basically, in presentation, this Python is very true to the classic. Now, I will say that the new Pythons are obviously stainless and it looks very nice, but the old Pythons were known for their beautiful finishes. If you ever seen an old blued Python in excellent condition, it is a work of art. My personal classic Python is bright stainless or mirror, and that's also a really cool finish. It would be cool if Colt started bringing back some of the more classic finishes, but at least for the time being, I'm just happy that the Python is back. Before we get too deep into this, I wanted to point out that none of us are real serious revolver shooters, as if you couldn't tell. But I do want to point out that shooting a revolver is actually a very different discipline, and I thought I might point out a couple of things to consider. First off, with semi-autos, it's a good habit to ride the trigger, keeping your finger on it the whole time, feeling the reset and being ready for the next pull without ever completely letting off the trigger. With revolvers, it's quite the opposite. For the trigger and cylinder to complete their function fully, you have to completely let go of the trigger, or you could actually cause a timing malfunction. You also need to watch your grip because you can't have your weak thumb drag the cylinder. Reloads are different. Anyway, I say all that to bring up that revolvers are very different. They can be a lot of fun to shoot, but you have to make some considerations when shooting them. I also say all that because we're about to start talking about triggers and trigger weights. But with revolvers, the feel of the trigger is sometimes more important than the actual pull weight. When you compare the new Python to the old Python, you can see that Colt did try to get very close to the original. My old Python in single action has a trigger weight of right about 4 pounds, and the new Python has a trigger weight of about 4.5 pounds on my scale. Both are very crisp, but if I had to nitpick, the older Python feels ever so slightly crisper. Both triggers are so good that they actually feel lighter than the actual pull weight. However, the new Python does feel like there's an extra safety in the trigger or something. Kind of like an 80 series trigger on a 1911. There's just a touch of mushiness compared to the original. But overall, I would say that Colt has done an excellent job with single action triggers. In double action, my old Python is pulling at 6 pounds and the new one is about 9 pounds on my scale. Now that sounds like a pretty significant discrepancy, and it is, but I would say that Colt has done a very good job of mimicking the extreme smoothness of the double action trigger the Python was known for. Sometimes double action triggers will become extremely hard, then all of a sudden release, making them very difficult to shoot. This is called stacking, the gradual increase of weight throughout the trigger pull. The new and the old Python have a very steady and predictable pull and then release, making them very enjoyable and much easier to shoot in double action. This goes back to what I was saying before about the pull weight not being the only measurement for judging revolver triggers. The new Python, like the old one, is very smooth with no stacking. Overall, while the trigger may fall just short of the original Python, I think Colt has done an impressive job bringing this into modern times and delivering it at a somewhat reasonable price point. Because the new Pythons are not handmade like the older ones, MSRP on the new Python is $1,500, which is a bargain if you've ever priced an original Python. However, supply will always dictate actual price. Let's talk about reliability for a second. First off, we had perfect reliability out of the Python that we tested with no issues whatsoever. However, it would appear that there were some issues with the very first pistols that went out. Apparently, the initial batch of Pythons were having some cylinder timing issues and light primer strikes. They had some revisions to remedy the issues, and the revised pistols will have a small L on the inside of the cylinder, like the one on our test sample. This designates that it is a Gen 2 or revised version, and like we said, with this revised version, we had 100% perfect function. I think this is a really cool offering, and not every pistol has to fill an exact and functioning role in your collection. You can buy a pistol because it's just fun to shoot, it looks cool, or makes you feel good. That's where I'm pretty much at with the snake guns. I like them a lot. I think they're very cool, but in a practical sense, I'm not sure I see many uses for them when compared to their modern counterparts. For me personally, I probably wouldn't buy a Python because I already own an original one. However, I could definitely see myself purchasing an Anaconda because I was never fortunate enough to pick one of those up. Of course, if I did get a modern Python when people asked to shoot my Python, I wouldn't have to say no. Also of great interest, in case you haven't heard, CZ has recently purchased Colt, and I'm very eager to see what CZ does with the snake guns and the entire Colt brand. I feel that CZ will be able to bring Colt and the snake guns back to their former glory. If you're interested in adding a Python to your collection, I would definitely recommend one, because it's going to be every bit the revolver you need while delivering all the classic looks and nostalgia by the dump truck load, and I think that's why most people are buying these revolvers anyway. The Python is also a certified zombie slayer, so I'm not sure what else you need to know about it. Sound off in the comment sections and let me know what you think about the new Python and if it's something you would buy. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and a huge thanks goes out to Gun Prime for letting us borrow the Python for the video. Why don't you go by and check them out? They always have a ton of really cool stuff in stock. A huge thanks goes out to Callaway Ballistics for providing the ammo for this review. And I know what you're thinking, but Tim, Callaway Ballistics doesn't have 38 Special. Well, they will, and we've been using it. In a couple weeks from the time this video comes out, they will have 38 Special. And remember, you can get free shipping with the code Alabama on orders over $200. Guys, if you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. As always, we have got some really big reviews we're working on that you won't want to miss. And if you want to know what those reviews are way before they hit the YouTube channel, check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Parler. There you can see what's being reviewed in real time. If you want to help support Alabama Arsenal, the best possible way to do that is through Patreon. These videos can be surprisingly expensive to make, and every little bit helps and is greatly appreciated. There's also Alabama Arsenal gear available right below the video if you want to go out and represent. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. And do not smile. All right, I'm sorry.